Hi, I'm Robert Young. I'm the Director of Operations here at Hydra-Slide, and today I'd like to go over some training on the setup, operation, and troubleshooting of our XLP150 skidding system. When your XLP150 system arrives, it's going to come in its own storage box. The storage box has a lid, and all your components necessary for the slide will be inside the storage box. The unit will come supplied with a set of tracks. Your slider plates are in this silver box here, the pusher heads, your push-pull cylinders, and then the storage box also contains some units that will contain your track connector bars, a couple of vehicle kits, operating manual. It'll have some spare parts including clevis pin and some touch-up paint. All the components within the XLP150 system are hand portable, so you need no more than 2 people to set everything up. The heaviest part of the system is your push-pull cylinders, which is about 36 kilograms. That system, or part of the component, comes with a handle on the cylinder support and at the back end, so 2 people can pick up the cylinder safely. Now next we're going to start talking about setting up your system, but before I do that, I'll just like to give you a couple points to consider before you actually start setting up your system. So hydraulic skidding requires a clear straight line path from the load to its final destination, so just make sure that the path is clear, free of any obstacles, and that you'll have a nice straight slide to get from where you need to go. Another thing you'll want to consider for setting up the system is the ground conditions. Just make sure that over the duration of the entire slide that the system is adequately supported on the ground to ensure that it operates properly. So let's now start talking about setting up the XLP150 skidding system. I've already laid out a couple tracks here to demonstrate how to connect the tracks together. It's a very simple track connection. You just slide the 2 adjacent tracks together. There's a couple alignment clips there that just need to be lifted up. Push the 2 tracks together. That'll align for the track connector bars to just drop in place. And that's all there is to it. No tools or extra equipment required. Okay, now that you've got your tracks down, the next thing you'd like to do is set up your slider plates onto the tracks. But one thing I'd like to highly recommend before you do that is make sure that the UHMW on the tracks and the bottom of your slider plates are completely free of dirt or debris, or else you run the risk of damaging the UHMW and the polished stainless steel surface of the slider plate. The slider plates come in 3 different lengths, which allows you multiple configurations depending on your load footprint. As I said, the slider plate is a polished stainless steel surface that slides over top of the UHMW plastic on your tracks. This gives you about a 10 to 15% friction factor, which is relatively high, but you'd like that for safety. So no other lubricants, greases, or dish soaps are required between the UHMW and the slider plate. Connecting the slider plates is very simple. It's a dovetail configuration, so you simply just line up the dovetails between adjacent slider plates and drop them into place. Similar to that. That allows you to both push and pull fully connected. The next component you'd like to set up will be your push-pull head. It's connected to the storage frame by the cylinder clevis connection pin. And so you just simply unscrew that, remove the push-pull head, and it again has a dovetail connection. So you connect it to your slider plates by just aligning up the dovetail and drop it into place. Once you've got your slider plates and your push-pull head connected, you're going to be ready to connect your push-pull cylinder. Now, prior to connecting the push-pull cylinder to your push-pull head, it's really good practice to extend and retract the cylinder a few times just to ensure that the connections are made properly, that the cylinder is working properly, and that avoids any damage that could be caused to the system by one cylinder functioning and the other not. Once you've connected your push-pull head to the slider plates, the next thing you can do is connect your push-pull cylinder. The cylinder has on its support a wedge plate on the top and the bottom, depending on which configuration you'd like to use, whether you're in push mode or pull mode. Simply drop that lug down into one of the ratchet slots in the track, pull your slider, your push-pull head back, and that pin that you took to remove the push-pull head from your storage box is now used to connect the push-pull cylinder to the push-pull head. And then you simply just slide the pin through, and then using the nut and washer that came supplied with it, connect the two pieces together, and now your push-pull cylinder is connected. Now, in order to have your push-pull cylinder engage in the ratchet track, you need to ensure that you leave at least 50 centimeters of your track exposed from the face of your load so that you'll have enough room to place your push-pull cylinder into at least the last ratchet track on the track. So this is the setup for the first line of track. Now you just repeat the exact same process for your second line of track. Just when you're doing that, make sure that the second line of track, your ratchet spacings in the track are lined up or the same distance from the load, so that you ensure that when your two cylinders are pushing, that they're pushing the same and in unison on the load at the same time. Once your second track is set up and you're ready, lower your load controlled down onto the system, and then you'll also be ready to hook up your hydraulic hoses from the push-pull cylinders to any suitable 10,000 PSI rated hydraulic power unit. All right, so at this point we've been setting up the track sections under our load. The main thing with setting up the track sections is that they are parallel, front and back, so they're equidistant apart. The track sections, when they connect, are very, very simple. You just slide the track sections into place. They have a lock and key, and then the track connector bars, they just slide into place, 1, 2, on each side, and that's it. And then basically what you do is you want to check to make sure that your two tracks are parallel, just by using your tape measure, and your accuracy is within plus or minus a 1/4 inch. So at this point, we've laid down our skid chute plates on top of the track under the load. This is what our load will sit on for the slide. The track sections connect via this dovetail design. They just slide into place and they're connected. Once we've got the track sections in place, then we connect our pusher head, same dovetail configuration, and the pusher head is what we connect the cylinder to, and the pusher head face will connect right up against the load. One thing I'd also like to point out is that this surface is a very good surface. It's poured concrete, it's smooth, it's flat, it's level. So you want to make sure that you check your surface for level and that there's no incline or decline, plus or minus 2%. A slight incline is okay, but you don't want to be pushing on a decline. If the surface is not nice and smooth and level like this, you require blocking. The system is designed to be fully supported, so make sure you provide adequate blocking underneath to provide a level surface. Okay, now we're ready to connect the push cylinder to the pusher head. So here we've got our cylinder and we set the mount right into the ratchet in the track. Then what we do then is we pull our pusher head back to the cylinder head. We connect it using this pin. And then we bolt it from the other side. During your setup, it's important to not point load directly onto the track. If you can, you should have, we recommend putting a wood or a rubber or some sort of material in between your load and the track to distribute the weight and to give it some friction. And another thing I'd like to point out is that when you have blocking in this, or if your load is directly on the skid chute, that the front of the pusher head needs to be in direct contact with the load or the blocking supporting the load. If you do not do that, you run the risk of damaging the front of the pusher plate because there's nothing there to stop it from bending. Right now we've got the system set up in the pull position. In an instant where, say, your load is too close to a wall and you do not have the clearance to insert the cylinder assembly on the back end of your load, you can actually use this system to pull it away from the load until you get clearance to actually put the cylinder system in to push your load. Along the edge of each track section, we've got tie-down lugs that would be used in the pull mode. When pulling, there could be a tendency for the track to lift up. So if you're pulling, we recommend that you tie the track down to a wooden support underneath, and again, make sure the track is level. So now we're ready to connect our hydraulic hoses to the cylinder. It's important to keep a rag on hand, a clean rag on hand to clean the connections. You don't want to introduce foreign debris into the system that can damage your hydraulic pump. So just give the surfaces of your couplers a quick clean, and then they're just hand tight connections. But you want to make sure that your couplers are always fully engaged. That way you know that the check inside the hose is open and oil will freely flow in. Otherwise you will find that your cylinders don't work properly. So then to operate the system, the first thing you want to do is to attach 10,000 PSI suitable rated hydraulic hoses. It's always a good idea to have a clean rag on hand. We highly recommend it to clean all your hose connections and couplers. It's always a good idea with your rag too that you do not leave debris from the rag itself on there. That's a note I get from hydraulic guys that, yeah, guys clean their hose connections with rags out in the field. That's great, but then they end up pulling a lot of lint and fiber material that was from the rags out of their hydraulic systems. That's causing problems. So just double check, make sure it's clean. Do the same with the coupler on the cylinder. Make sure it's clean, free of debris. Once you do that, it's simply it's a nice quick connection. So you just put the two hose ends together and just hand tight. There's never a need to put a wrench on these couplers. However, they do need to be fully engaged. If the hose connections are not fully engaged, then you will have problems with cylinder operation, and I'll go over troubleshooting and problems with cylinders and the system later on in the video. So let's assume for a moment you did have some trouble getting the hose and connector coupler together hand tight, and that they weren't fully engaging due to pressure either in the cylinder or in the hoses themselves. Each system we supply has an Interpack coupler bleed tool kit, and inside that kit has 3 parts. The center part is designed to thread on your hose fitting. It's identified as male, so this is a male hose end. It tells you which end that you attach to, so I'm attaching the male end. So we've got the center part section connected to the hose, it's put on a male hose coupling. I grab the male hose coupling pressure relief, and what I'll do is I'll thread this on, and as I'm threading it on, the end of this bolt is going to push uniformly down on the check ball on the hose connection, and it will, as I thread, it will open up that check ball and it will allow pressure to be released from the hose or the cylinder. So you just thread it down. If there's too much pressure and you can't hand thread it down, then you can put a wrench on the end of this bolt and wrench that until the pressure releases. The pressure will release oil into this center compartment, and so you'd want to have a rag or a bucket underneath to catch the oil as it comes out. Once the oil's out, you just unscrew the pressure relief off, the hose connection, and your oil has now come out. And then you should be able to now get your couplers hand tight. All right, I'm going to turn the power unit on, and then we're going to use the system to move this container out a couple feet from the wall. Okay, to switch the system from pull mode to push mode, all you got to do is just pop the pin out, flip the cylinder assembly over, pin. Once you're finished your slide with the XLP150 system, then all your components can be stored back inside the storage box. The system comes supplied with forklift pockets and lifting lugs for transportation. If you do need to use the lifting lugs, just ensure that your rigging is adequate to support the maximum rated capacity of the storage box. To maintain the system, we recommend that prior to using it and when putting away, you inspect the components for any signs of damage, and if any damage is seen, you fix that damage or replace any broken parts. We especially recommend that you maintain your hydraulic components in a safe functioning manner. Inspect the hose couplers. If you find any damage to the hose couplers, you'll definitely want to fix and replace that before proceeding with operation. For additional maintenance information, just refer to your operating and maintenance manual. Most of the troubleshooting points that we get in problems when we have systems or feedback from customers with problems with the system has to do with hose couplers. The hose couplers need to be fully engaged, and even if they're not quite fully engaged, if they're a little bit not tight enough, the check balls inside the hose and the couplers will not function properly. So you might be able to extend the cylinder, but you won't be able to retract it, or you won't even be able to extend it. So if you're having problems with extending or retracting the cylinders, the first place to go is your hose connections and ensure that all your hose connections are fully engaged and hand tight. You might think that you're tightening it and it's hand tight. If you can't get it anymore and you see that gap still with the coupler, I would definitely, the first thing, check that the hose or the cylinder isn't pressurized, and if it is, use your coupler bleed tool, depressurize the hose or the coupler, and then you should be able to get it fully hand tight. If you've checked and the hoses are all fully connected and hand tight, and there's still a problem with the cylinder, say it won't extend, then your slider plate could be bound in the track. So again, check to make sure that the slider plate or your tracks have actually been set up parallel and that they're traveling in a straight line. The load could also be heavier than what was reported. This system can push up to 350 tons, and if you were given an incorrect load weight and it's actually heavier than the capacity of the system, the cylinders aren't going to be able to move the load. So that would be another thing you'd want to check. Our cylinders come with an external pressure relief valve. So if you go to extend the cylinder and it extends, but when you go to retract, it won't retract and the relief goes. Whenever you see this external relief go, that most likely means your hose coupler on your retract side is not properly engaged, and double check that at the cylinder and at the pressure unit. If that doesn't fix the problem and your cylinder is still not functioning properly, there could be internal damage to the cylinder, so you should take the cylinder out of service and have it inspected and repaired by a certified hydraulic shop. The other thing you might find when you're extending your cylinder, it extends in spurts and it's kind of jerky and not extending smoothly. That's most likely air entrained in the system, especially the cylinder. So again, remove the cylinder, make sure the couplers are on the top so air can come up to the top of the cylinder. Run your cylinders out 3, 4, 5 times in order to get the air out of the cylinder. Once they're operating smoothly again, reinsert them into the pusher head and you're good to go. Another thing you might find is your load is not sliding in a straight line. So there could be 2 possibilities there. Either you have not set the tracks up in a straight line and parallel to one another, so double check that your tracks haven't come out of parallel, or the cylinders aren't pushing in unison, so one cylinder is pushing faster and ahead of the other. So pull your cylinders out, check them for proper operation, deal with any problems, and then bring your cylinders back into service. All right, so there you have it. We've demonstrated how to set up the XLP150, how to operate the system in pull mode and push mode. I'll just go over some key features to set up. You want to make sure you have a clear level path that's fully supported for the track sections. You want to make sure that the tracks are set up level and parallel to one another. The level, you have plus or minus 2%. Slight incline is okay, but you want to avoid a decline. The level or the parallelness is plus or minus a 1/4 inch. You also want to make sure that the edge of your load, wherever you're pushing from, is equidistant from the ratchet, so that when your cylinders go into place, both cylinders are the same distance from the load so that they push in synchronous unison. You want to make sure that your hose connections are fully engaged to make sure the system works properly. And if you keep those few tips in mind, you should enjoy the use of the XLP150. Thank you.